Most people in the United States drink sake completely wrong, and it's not really your fault. Your entire idea of sake probably comes from one type of experience, a cup of hot sake in your local sushi spot. And that's why in this video, I'm gonna go over the 3 mistakes that completely ruin people's sake drinking experience, and in some cases, make them never wanna try the drink again. Because here's the thing, most people have only ever experienced one version of sake, and that's where everything starts to go wrong. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go over why people's first sake drinking experience is actually misleading and where things kind of start to go a bit astray. And then I'm gonna go over the 3 mistakes that people generally make that ruin their sake drinking experience. And then I'll show you what to do differently so you actually enjoy it. And by the end of the video, you'll at least know more than most people in the United States about drinking sake, and you'll be able to enjoy it a whole lot better than you were before. So let's do it. Before we jump into my personal story, I figured this is probably the best time, if any, to introduce this bottle right here. This is a seasonal sake, so, you know, it's not produced year round, hence the seasonal part of it. This is the Narutotai Shiboritate sake. This is a Junmai Nama Genshu. Nama means it's unpasteurized, and Genshu means it is uncut, undiluted. So it's basically, for my whiskey people, just think of it as like cask strength. So this is actually a 14%. So normally when you see a Genshu, which is, again, going back to like the cask strength part, normally it's closer to like that 18, sometimes up to 20%. But this one is only 14%. So this one is on the lower side for a Genshu. And I can see behind the separate sticker here, has a polishing ratio of 65%. So yeah, it's just a Junmai, but this thing tastes really good. And yeah, since I'm introducing it, Kanpai. Man, that's good. I think I'm gonna put this back in the fridge because this is supposed to stay refrigerated, and even though it has this nice chill on it, I don't want to start getting warmed up while I am doing the rest of this video, so I'll be right back. So yeah, the first time I had sake, I was in a sushi restaurant, all you can eat, of course. And you know what they say, when you're in Rome, do as the Romans, or when you're in a sushi restaurant, you do as the hot sake drinkers do. And so, of course, I got myself some hot sake. And while I thought it was okay, you know, it's cool, I'm, you know, eating sushi, so this is, you know, the thing to do. It didn't really leave much of an impression on me. It definitely didn't make me want to like go out and grab another bottle after I left the restaurant. And I think this is kind of how most people's experience is with sake, like if you aren't already really into it. And I made the mistake of taking that one experience in this one condition and generalizing it to what sake is. And that was a mistake, because that's like taking a warm can of Bud Light and thinking that's representative of what beer is. When like beer, especially, you know, you start getting into like the craft scene, it's so much more nuanced, so much more diverse than just this one not very good representation of it. And that leads me directly into mistake number 1, which, you know, I've kind of already let the cat out the bag, but only experiencing sake that one way, hot sake. That is, you know, a huge mistake, but it's completely understandable, because when you realize how sake was actually introduced to the United States, we were getting the table sake, the fruit sushi, and long story short, I explained this in a previous video, but long story short, when you get the cheap stuff, and you know, when you're a restaurant trying to make a profit, when you should probably be getting rid of these bottles, instead of getting rid of them, you just continually heat them up to hide the bad stuff. And so of course, for most people, they weren't getting some, you know, premium sake experience. Is their almost one and only time of actually giving it a try. But understand that like in Japan, because they, you know, weren't just limited to food sushi, and the pricing is a whole lot better there for even more premium sake, temperature doesn't have this like stigma that it does in the United States, because again, we were introduced to it in a very like specific way and kind of just thrown out there and told like this is kind of what you do when you eat sushi, but you know, that's pretty much it. Premium sake, on the other hand, is usually served chilled or room temperature at, you know, the warmest. And that's because it loses a lot of those delicate aromas when you start adding heat to it. And it just completely becomes nothingness, you know, once you like overheat it. So I say all that to say, drinking hot sake isn't wrong. It isn't even only reserved for bad or cheap sake. It's just not representative of all of what sake is, and it's definitely not representative of some of the more premium expressions of sake. And speaking of representative of what sake has to offer, that leads me directly into mistake number 2, which is not trying some of the better sakes, those ginjos and those Daiginjos. And this, more so talking to my sake curious folks, those that have already, you know, at least given sake a chance, but have kind of just stuck with either the stuff that you only run into at like the local supermarket or, you know, in some cases a gas station. Premium sake in layman's terms essentially comes down to the rice polishing ratio, which I've kind of alluded to this on how to read sake labels, but you really just want to be looking for a rice polishing ratio of 60% or below. And that's going to put you in the Ginjo and Daiginjo range. It's not going to tell you everything, but just like with whiskey, how a higher age statement at least tells you you're going to get some nuance, some of those like oak and all those flavors and whatnot in whiskey. A higher polishing ratio tells you you're going to get some more nuanced, aromatic, you know, sometimes sweeter taste and notes, and, you know, that more aromatic aroma. And while most people might think, oh, this is too much to start with for beginners, but you also have to think about it like this. When you're trying to introduce somebody to something that is foreign to them in more ways than one with sake, you don't kind of give them the like mid-tier or like barely passable stuff that you wouldn't even drink. You want to introduce them to something that's borderline your favorite, or at least like, you know, nothing too advanced. And it's the same with sake. Like you want to try something that's really representative of like the quality side of what sake can be, not like the, you know, the kind of everyday beaters, if you will, because that's what table sake really is. It's not horrible, but it's not something that you're gonna convert somebody into a sake drinker off of if they've never really given it a chance in the first place. And so that's why I say, if you've never actually tried a Ginjo or a Daiginjo, you really haven't even experienced what sake can be. But if you are willing to change that, I mean, really go out and get anything from Kubota or Dassai, and just pick anything up from either one of those breweries and you won't be disappointed. Make sure you put it in the fridge first. I'll get a little bit further into how to actually enjoy it down the line. But those are my recommendations. Pick up something from Dassai or pick up something from Kubota. But even if you try a better bottle, this last mistake is probably the biggest one ruining people's experience. And of course, I'm talking about mistake number 3, the third and final mistake. And that is thinking that sake only goes with Japanese food. And this one is the biggest mistake, but it's also the most understandable, because unless you're already into sake or you have a friend that's really into sake, you don't really have any inclination or any real motivation to go out and try and find sake on your own, especially when you don't have any kind of context of what to be looking for outside of a sushi restaurant. And that, for most people, again, is probably the only place that you've actually even given it a chance. But what a lot of people don't understand is that sake is actually one of the most food-friendly alcohols on the planet. It can go with pizza, it can go with barbecue, it can go with baked chicken, it can go with fried chicken. And it can go with my favorite, my every Friday ritual, a nice juicy steak. That's right. Sake is really good with steak, which is most important to me. Like I said, eat a steak every Friday. And one of the best things to pair a nice steak with for me is a nice glass of sake. So if you've only been drinking sake with Japanese foods or Asian foods more broadly, you are missing out on a huge part of what sake brings to the culinary table. I'm telling you, it's gonna unlock some great flavors, some great combinations. You gotta go out there and experiment. And the best way to do that is to just grab a bottle of sake and just pair it with some foods that you already eat that aren't Japanese. Just give it a try. And you know, unless it's just a very bad bottle on its own, I guarantee you, you're gonna start to figure out that, man, there's actually some stuff here when you're pairing sake with foods that you already like to eat. So once you stop thinking of sake as just this thing that you pair with Japanese food, you start to realize something very important. Most people don't dislike sake, they've just had a very limited and sometimes unremarkable version of it. If you want to immediately improve your sake drinking experience, do these 3 things and I guarantee you, you'll change things up. 1, try a Ginjo or a Daiginjo chilled. 2, when you try a chilled, make sure you try it in a wine glass. And not only does it make you look more fancy and sophisticated and refined, but it's also gonna help bring those aromas. It's also gonna help, I'll figure out the hand gesture later. It's also gonna help bring those aromas up to your nose from the glass versus like, when you're using the, what do you call it? Versus when you're using the ceramics and it's just like, a non-funneled kind of shape. So use a wine glass when you drinking your chilled Ginjo or Daiginjo. And 3rd, experiment pairing sake with foods that you already enjoy, as I mentioned above. Try those 3 things and I guarantee you're gonna elevate your sake drinking experience, and you're gonna start to find things, even if you were somebody that was already either sake curious or you've found a couple bottles that you like, but you've only been drinking them with Japanese food, or you've only been drinking them out of basically like regular cups that aren't helping really bring those aromas and really enhance that experience. So I am curious, what has been your experience with sake so far? Have you only had it hot, or have you actually tried it chilled at home? I'd really like to know how people have been enjoying sake, especially in the United States where it's not as common, not as popular, especially outside of sushi restaurants. So let me know in the comments down below how you've actually been enjoying or not enjoying sake up to this point. So again, the key takeaway is this: if you've only experienced sake in one way, you've only experienced a small portion of it. Once you start figuring out different temperatures to try sake, different premium levels of sake to try, and different food pairings to try those sakes with, it's gonna unlock a completely different drinking experience for you. And maybe one day you'll come back to this video and thank me for it. And speaking of those temperatures, in the next video, we're gonna do something very interesting. We're gonna take the same bottle and try it at 3 different temperatures and see how those 3 different temperatures actually impact the flavor profile and the aromas of that bottle. So if you wanna continue exploring the world of sake with your boy, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll keep learning, we'll keep sipping, and until I see you in the next one, kanpai.